Are you interested in becoming an ME and want to know if it's worth the wait in the Coast Guard? Well, in this series of interviews, I interview my friend ME1 Haines, where he explains what exactly an ME does, what type of units you could end up at, what the different units are. So, like what a DSF does, what an MSRT does, MIST, tacklet, all these different things, and also some really cool information like how to become a dog handler, what do military police officers do, some things that you guys, I'm sure that you want to know if you're interested and what exactly an ME does. So if you want to see the full interview, you can check out in the description box. I've got a playlist that'll include all the videos to this interview, and hope you guys enjoy. Till next time, guys, peace out. What exactly differentiates people from BMs from MEs? Because I know lots of people like on the Reddit and lots of people in the comment sections and forums, even in the Coast Guard, they say don't go ME. All you're going to be doing is training, and if you want to do tactical work, then become a BM because they're the guys that are doing law enforcement more often, and they're more like in that mission. And as an ME, it's kind of we're kind of taught when we get into the Coast Guard by the BMs. It's like they're just the training guys. They don't really do too much. What are your thoughts and opinions on that?
So I think a big thing with that is that comes from a different spectrum of where MEs are stationed, including stations, which is where I was at, sectors, where the MEs are primarily, in charge of LE training. Sometimes they may run an armory. When I was in New York, myself and another third, like we ran an armory, something that really a GM you would think would do, right? But as we see throughout our time in the Coast Guard, we know that there's certain billets that are kind of uniquely fashioned. So I'll say first that BMs really are of super versatile rating. They've been around a long time, and you can really do a lot as a BM. And as far as ME goes, it depends on where you're stationed. If you're at a DSF unit, which, like I said, I think 70% of our billet structure, I think it's actually like 64.5, I think, to be completely correct. But those billets are at these tactical units where you're shooting, you're doing close quarters combat regularly, you're fast roping, hook and climbing, you're doing exercises, you're going overseas, you're doing lots of stuff. You're a short notice response team. So it's different. I think a lot of people that also speak that way on forums aren't fully informed. And a lot of people, even in the Coast Guard, don't know what a lot of the DSF does and don't know what other MEs do besides the one they've maybe seen at their station. And I will say, I have a lot of friends in the Coast Guard, and a lot of them tell me, man, the MEs at my unit are lazy. They don't do anything. All they do is, plug off work on someone else. And you know what? You have that in every rating. So unfortunately, I think there are some people who are at units that are seen by these other ratings who assume that, man, all MEs must be this way. They don't do work, so on and so forth. But we do, man. We do a lot of work.
And how physically demanding would you say being an ME is?
Well, I think bottom line, it's a very physically demanding rating. It's one in which PT is a normal thing, a normal part of your job. As you're expected to be a boarding officer, which you should always want to be fit, not only for yourself to be able to protect yourself and respond, but protect your teammates if you're on a boarding, your crew, whatever the case may be. It is very physically demanding, and again, showing up at these DSF units, you're expected to go through an indoctrination process. Sometimes it's called Green Team or Whetstone, and it's a very physically demanding, physically grueling time period in which you're pushed to your limits, which is important on two aspects. It shows your teammates and your command what you're capable of, and it shows yourself what you're capable of and how far you're willing to push for yourself and for your team.
So being an ME is not just a person that likes guns. What type of person would you say would be an ME?
I think a big thing is an A-type personality for the most part. You're someone who, whatever you're going to do, you want to do it well, right? Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. You want to be the best at it. You're competitive maybe a little bit by nature. Hopefully you do like guns. You're expected to qualify in your weapon systems, and that's one of the things you have to do to remain an ME is to be able to qualify. To like law enforcement, safe to say, and to also, I think all that is be willing to work in small teams, because generally speaking, MEs are going to be working with teams doing some pretty cool stuff and you're going to have to rely on your teammates. So you should be good, but you want to be a good team player as well.
So you said the majority of MEs are at DSFs. So when you graduate from MEA school, are most of the billets going to be at these DSFs?
So that's a very high probability. And right now, our rating force master chief, as well as our prior rating force master chief, and they're working to restructure our career path and how we do it. But currently, there's a large majority of ME3s from A school that are assigned to DSF units because by nature, as I said, that's where a lot of our billets are, but that's where we're called to serve. That's why part of the reason the rating was established was to be able to outfit our MSRTs East and West and our TACLETs South and Pacific.
Okay. So the DSF is basically just like your starting point typically for your career in which you kind of build different skills to perform missions as an ME at like TACLETs or MSRTs, MIS, stuff like that, if what I'm understanding?
So that's definitely, I think, where the rating, where our RFMC wants us to go, and I think that's the best way a lot of people would recommend, a lot of senior MEs would recommend. So myself included, although I'm not a legacy ME, like I said, I was a DC before. I started my petty officer career at a DSF unit at the time. It was called DOG, but I started at a TACLET, and then from there, like, that really set the pace and set the tone high. I mean, if you can handle it there, you make it there, you're fully qualified. I mean, everything's pretty much a piece of cake from there. And you just keep, from there you can keep climbing, but you've got the baseline knowledge. You did the hardest stuff when you were younger. You got it out of your way. Now you're working towards more advanced qualifications, instructor qualifications, firearms instructor, advanced marksmanship instructor, close quarters combat instructor, becoming a precision marksman, things like that. Like, you're working towards different quals as you climb up. And that's kind of, I think, where the rating will eventually be. And that's where most people end up doing it.
Yeah, it sounds like a very different environment than kind of the Coast Guard that I'm used to, being at operational units, where it's like, this is what you need to know. It almost sounds like these DSFs, it's like you're almost like in your own Coast Guard where you're training people and doing all these different things, if I'm kind of understanding correctly, while you do missions as well.
So it is kind of a microcosm in its own way, and really, it, depending upon the unit you're at, so then the team that you're on, be it a lead or a DAS, it's going to vary slightly. But ultimately, once you go in there, like that is things are slightly different. Again, the way they operate is far different than anyone's going to see probably at a station or at a sector, because you work very closely with people. So you have a team leader. You maybe work with a commission officer, your chiefs really closely, whereas at other units, hey, I don't talk to the chief, I don't see the chief, I don't talk to the officers. So it is slightly different there, and you're instantly thrown in and said, given expectations. Hey, you need to qualify by this date, and you're held to a very strict standard. And sometimes other places in the Coast Guard, it's a little bit more relaxed. It's just different. I mean, it's a little more amped up.
And what would you say your work life is like on a day-to-day basis?
So again, it's going to depend on where you're stationed. It's going to be involved a lot of PT, as you mentioned. It's going to probably involve a lot of range training, a lot of CQC, preparing for a mission. Sometimes you're just doing nothing but standing by, being mentally and physically prepared to be called. Like I said, short notice. It really depends on where you're stationed. Sometimes you could go in and do some administrative work and kind of, it might be your down week where you're just doing admin work, you're working on professional development, you're going to C schools, things like that. But honestly, no 2 days are the same. Literally one day, even for me at a training center, one day I can be at a range. The next day I'm literally driving a forklift. Like it's the craziest thing. Super random sometimes.
Wow. So do you guys don't like have a set schedule for like how you're going to be doing things? It's more kind of like, whatever the mission calls for is what you're doing, or?
So there's a set schedule, but it is dependent upon the mission at hand. If you're on a ready team, essentially, where you could be called out, then you may work different times, and you may have different requirements as far as where you have to be and when you have to be there. But generally speaking, there is a set schedule. It's just going to be dependent upon what your mission is. If you're getting qualified, it's going to depend on what you're doing. If you're training a specific task, if it's marksmanship that day, if you're getting sign-offs for, whatever JQR you have to get done, it just depends.
Okay. So what, the ME wait right now, it's like 4 years. It's actually closed, the whole school. But still lots of people want to go ME. When I first joined, it was also a 4-year wait. Then the wait kind of shortened, got a little bit shorter, but now it's back up to being 4 years plus. Do you, lots of people say, hey, don't wait 4 years to go ME, just go BM or MK or something like that. What do you recommend, or if someone wants to be an ME, would you recommend them waiting 4 years plus for the school, or what would you recommend in that situation?
So to be frank, I'm a big fan of liking what you do and loving what you do. I think that's very important. But I think that there's a lot of things that you can do in the Coast Guard and you can get a lot of satisfaction in not being an ME. I mean, frankly, the really downside to this whole thing is that the A school list is closed. And so, there's no opportunity for you to go to MEA school. So I would maybe, if I was already in and I found out that, I would look at something else. What could be a backup plan? We should always have backup plans. Find something else that you think you might really enjoy doing. Whatever rating you go, you can always later on request a change in rating. You can do a lateral request. So that's something maybe to consider. Hey, I'm going to do something that maybe this isn't what I wanted to do as much, but I would do something else. Or do something that could get me in the positions as similar to an ME as possible. And those include, but not are limited to, being a BM. Like you said, I mean, they are the biggest rating in the Coast Guard. You can do a lot of stuff. You can be an LE instructor. You can be a boarding officer, a boarding team member. You can also drive boats. You can do all these different things. You can be at a mist. So there's tons of stuff that you could do. If I wasn't in, I frankly would probably try to do something else. But it's all about what you want to do. I think ultimately you got to enjoy your job at the end of the day, because if you don't, that's going to show. And the Coast Guard is already shorthanded at everything we do. I've never been stationed in a unit where somebody can get hurt, get injured, or go on leave and us not feel the impact. So to have someone who doesn't love what they're doing, who doesn't care about what they're doing, only negatively impacts that unit readiness and morale, but also it kind of has bigger effects. So I would say do something you love. If that includes wait, or find something that you could be happy with.
And with the with that 4-year wait, if like you said, someone could put their name on the A school list and lateral over, is for ME though, is that still contingent on the higher tenure, or does higher tenure not play as big of a role for MEs just because it takes so long to advance?
So all that, unfortunately, no one right now is immune to that. Each individual would still have to put in a waiver request. As far as all I've seen, there's been no updated policy on that. So you'd have to put a waiver in. But the cool thing about EPM is they would go through that and they would assess that. And they would say, okay, here's, they're going to take that into consideration. So again, I think it's all about following your heart and stuff. And a lot of people used to do it. There was a long wait at a time to be an aviation survival technician, right? To be a rescue swimmer. There's been a long wait. And those people, and I know several of them, who were like, no, man, I waited and I waited and I waited. And that's admirable, right? You're going to do something you want to do. So personal choice, I think doing a good Venn diagram of the pros and cons would be smart to do. But follow your heart is what I say in the end of the day.